What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in again this week. This week we're going to be diving back into another Unreal Engine MetaSound video where we are going to be taking a look at controlling MetaSounds, this time with widgets. So a huge shout out to Stio over on my Discord channel for bringing this up to me. And if you'd like to be a part of that Discord channel, you will find a link in the description below. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content. With that being said, let's get started. So the other day, Stio reached out in Discord and stated that they were trying to use the video that I had done on controlling MetaSounds with MIDI to kind of alter that a little bit to change it so that you're using the user interface widget to control aspects of MetaSound. And to be completely honest, that's not something that I had even thought of until they brought it up. So thank you very much for bringing that up, because I figure if you're having issues with it, then most likely other people are having issues with it as well. So I had played around with it and I was able to get it to work. So I decided, let's go ahead and do a video on it. And that's what we're going to do now. So let's jump over to Unreal. And I've just got a default blank level. There's nothing in it because we're not actually going to be putting anything inside the level. What we're going to do is I'm going to drag my content browser window over here real quick. And we're going to go ahead and right click. We're going to go down to user interface and set up a blueprint widget. And I'm just going to call this meta control. And I'm not going to be going through how to set up and design user interface widgets. I'm just going to go through this part fairly quickly. So we've got our interface layout, and because everything is black in the level, I'm just going to go ahead and throw an image in here, and we'll size this up 1920 by 1080. Just so we have a plain white background to work with. Go ahead and anchor that center. And then from here, we're going to pull a slider in. Because what they were trying to do is they were actually trying to control the pitch of a piece of audio using a slider. So we're going to go ahead and anchor that center as well. And since we're adjusting the pitch, we're going to leave the minimum at 0 so that it stays its true pitch. And then just for the sake of demonstration, let's ramp this up to 12. And go ahead and compile that. So with our slider selected, we're going to scroll to the bottom here and we're going to do an event on value change. And this is going to pop us up to our graph. And what we want to do is we're actually going to create an event dispatcher. And I'm just going to call this pitch change. And so that you guys can see, I am going to go ahead and disable my camera. And under input, we're going to set this to a float. And we're just going to go ahead and name that input pitch. So then what we're going to do is we're going to bring this in and we are going to call it. Now, I have noticed that sometimes this happens where even though we called that input pitch, when we call it, it says new parameter. So what you need to do is you need to actually compile that first, then bring it in. And now you'll see that it says pitch. If it just says new parameter, then whatever you named it didn't take. So we're going to go ahead and connect this here and connect that here. And we are done, other than compiling and saving it. This is all you need to do inside your menu graph. So from here, we can go ahead and move this out of the way. I'm going to move that out of the way. And we're going to go into our level blueprint because we do need to call that widget into the viewport. So on event begin play, we're going to go ahead and create a widget. And the class, we're just going to select our meta control. And then we need to add to viewport. Select our target. When we compile that and save it, now when we hit play, you see we've got our white background and our slider. So from here, there is one more thing that we want to do. And this is just as far as the widget setup. We want to change the input to UI only. So we're going to set input mode UI only. And we can also target that widget. So from here, we're going to go ahead and create our MetaSound. I'm going to go under sound. And for this example, I'm just going to use the starter music. So I'm just going to call this music here real quick. Going to get a wave player. Make this stereo. Connect our outputs. Select our asset. So this is just the default music that comes with the starter pack. And now, since we're in our wave player, what we're also going to do is we're going to create a new input, and we want to make this a float. And we're going to call this pitch shift. And if we right click, you can see our input actions. We now have that pitch shift. And you can see with the green node end here, that means it is a float, and we're going to go ahead and set that to our pitch shift. And that's actually all we need to do for the music. And I say that meaning that's all we have to do for this particular setup. If you're doing things like changing volumes, changing frequencies, and like a sine wave generator or something like that, you are going to have more inputs and such. I am also going to set this to loop, because when we shift this pitch up, it's also going to make it play faster, and we're going to run out of real estate real quick if we don't loop that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we can close our MetaSound. Now back here in our level blueprint, we can go ahead and grab that MetaSound, pull it up, and we're just going to keep going on our execute pins. And just like you've seen me do in multiple other MetaSound videos when we're working with blueprints, we're going to come off this return value, and we are going to get the parameter interface. This is what's going to allow us to send any information from blueprint into that MetaSound. So what we're going to do now is, off of this, we are going to set a float, which is an interface call. It's under primitive. And since we called that that input inside our MetaSound pitch shift, we also want to call this pitch shift. So now at this point, we have a menu. It has a slider. We've given that slider some value, and we've set our MetaSound up and is now expecting something to control that pitch shift. So now what we need to do is I'm just going to pull this over a little bit further. We are going to bind an event, and because I created this event inside our widget called pitch change, we should now be able to come over here and type in pitch change. And you may need to turn off context sensitive, and we are going to bind an event to pitch change. Now it is going to be looking for a target, so we're going to need to come over here to our create meta control widget, and we're just going to drag that over. So on that bind event to pitch change, this is very much like the controlling MetaSounds with MIDI. We're going to come off here, and we're going to turn our context sensitive on, and under add event, we are going to create a custom event. And I'm just also going to call this pitch change. And because we're binding it from that event, it knows that it's a float. It's already looking at the input that we had here that we called pitch. So it automatically puts that pitch pin here. And so from here, we're going to drag off and set the float. And then we're going to drag this pitch to the value, because what it's doing is it's taking the value that we set for this slider, which again, we set as a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 12. And it's now sending that out from here into our set float, which we have going to that frequency or that pitch. Let's just go ahead and clean this up a little bit. We'll go ahead and compile it and save it. And now when we come into our level, when I hit play, we should hear the music start, and then our slider should be adjusting that pitch. And when we exited the player, I'm sure you saw that error pop up. And basically what I had forgotten to do was inside our level blueprint, we need to get the player controller and then compile it, save it. And now when we don't get that error anymore. So I have expanded on this a little bit just to show you that pitch shift isn't the only thing that you can do with this. So what I've done is I actually created another interface that looks like this. So I've got a sine wave generator that we're going to be able to turn on and off. We can adjust the frequency. And then I've also got some music that, again, we are changing the pitch, but I've also got some volume variables here. So if we pull this back over and I hit play, this pops up in our viewport. And so now we have our sine wave generator that we can turn on and off. And then we also have some music. So this would be really useful if you are setting up like a main menu for your game or an options menu, and you want to be able to control different volumes. So let's jump in here to the blueprint, and I will show you how I set this up. So we're going to go ahead and open our level blueprint. And this is a little bit more elaborate than what I had originally shown in that first one, just changing the pitch. So this first section here, this is just pulling our widget into the viewport. And from here, we've got several different events that we're binding. Because if we go to our interface and we take a look at the graph, I've got an event that is turning our sine wave on, turning it off, changing the frequency value, and then for our music, we're turning it on and off, we're changing the volume, and we're changing the pitch. So these are all events that were created in the event dispatcher. So the first thing that we're doing is we're adding our audio component, which is our sine wave generator. Which is set up like this. I've got a trigger toggle for enabling and disabling that sine wave, and then we've got a frequency input just like we did with the music. And then from there, we've also got our music. So I've got an input to turn it on, turn it off, and change the pitch. Now you'll notice that in a wave player, there isn't an input node for volume. We could, if we wanted to, we could add a mixer. Like if we were summing this, I could do input gain. But if we take a look at our blueprint, we do actually have, once we get over everything on this side is for the sine wave, everything over here is for the music. There is actually a node for the blueprint called adjust volume. And if we set our target from that audio component into the adjust volume, it will adjust the volume specifically for this component. So it's not setting the volume for an entire sound class, it's setting the volume for one specific component. So jumping back over here, we've got our bind events, which is turning the sine wave on, turning it off, changing the frequency. And then on this side, we've got binding events, turning the music on, turning it off. I forgot to name this one, but it is the pitch and our volume. Now with the music on, I do have this going into a do once because we don't want the player to be able to hit turn the music on, and then if they hit it again, it's also going to re-trigger. So I have this set so that when they turn it on, it only happens once. When they turn it off, it does set the trigger, but it also resets this so that they can turn it back on. And that's really it. It's a pretty simple setup. I know there's a long string of things happening here, but in all honesty, it's fairly straightforward from start to finish. Now, of course, what is the purpose of all this? As I mentioned before, you could use a lot of this if you're setting up something in like an options menu or a main menu to control your game sound. But if you wanted to get absolutely crazy with it, I guess technically you could build a mixing console inside Unreal Engine, and this is all functional, and it's not finished yet. It is something that I'm working on. What's the point? There really isn't one, just to say that I built a mixing console inside Unreal Engine. A lot of these features are really cool though. Like we can set up low pass and high pass. We can mute and solo channels just like you would in a mixing console. And just like you would typically in a DAW, these are also, you can type in here. So if we wanted this 50% to our right, well, now it's 50% to our right. And if we wanted this fader set at -5, now it's set at -5. So again, this is something I'm working on. It's not completely functional as of yet. And obviously you would have to have the project file to be able to input different stems. So it's really not worth it, to be honest. Like I said, I'm just doing it to be able to say that I've done it. So I will be posting more if I get this finished and set up, but as of right now, hopefully this gets you started at the very least with creating like option menus and things like that. So if there is anything that you'd like to see me try with MetaSounds in Unreal Engine, please let me know in the comments below. Or again, you can join the Sound Effects Guy Discord server that will be linked in the description. Until next time.